Okay, I had responded in the comments that I would look back into the secret space program stuff because it's been a little while since I dove down that rabbit hole. And I've once again come across Tony Rodriguez, which one of the commenters was citing. And I don't think that commenter is going to necessarily like what I have to say, but I will remain honest. I will not blow smoke up your ass when I don't believe something. And here is why. So Tony Rodriguez, his big deal is he basically claims that he was abducted as a child in against his will into the secret space program where he worked as a slave on the moon and he fought on Mars like he was just some kind of soldier, and then his consciousness was returned back to his body as a kid, and then now he's getting these memories back like almost Total Recall style. And they're very, very vivid. And honestly, the way he describes things, where like certain details are missing, but other things are super vivid, it reminds me of actually how I dream. He probably has. Not everybody apparently dreams the same way. I didn't know that, but some people have really, really vivid dreams, and other people have more abstract. The way he describes these things, it's actually closer to how I dream. So I actually, I don't think he is doesn't believe what he's saying. I think he absolutely believes what he's saying. I don't think the man's a liar, but I don't believe what he's experiencing is what he seems to think it is. So this video, you can look it up, or it was in the comments as well. Basically, the first alien he explains, it's a reptile he communicated telepathically with. Yeah, it sounds reasonable up until he says that the guy was working a 9 to 5 lifting things. That he was a slave and he was being used as basically a warehouse worker. Now, with all the advanced technology and crazy stuff that they're talking about, why on earth would you need to enslave somebody to be a warehouse worker, to lift things? They already have anti-gravity tech, according to him. They already have all this other stuff. Why on earth do you need a strong little guy, whether he's, a strong little human or a strong little reptile, to lift things? That is very suspect. I understand that he does describe this conversation he had with this guy and this alien, sure, but the whole context doesn't make any sense, particularly when you start hearing more of how his world is structured. It's structured more like a fantasy novel, and I say like sci-fi fantasy novel, than it is something where like, oh yeah, this is how it would work. Because somebody being a slave who needs to lift heavy objects, that seems completely counterintuitive to all the technologies and stuff that Tony explains otherwise. So that's one of the first things that he talks about that I don't like. He talks about age regression, faces being blurry in his memory. Tony, he's experiencing what he's describing to a T is essentially when somebody has a very, very vivid dream, and like stuff like what I have, and then sometimes when you go back and you're trying to recall what's going on, the faces end up blurry. Now he thinks he's under the impression that, oh, they blurred faces deliberately so that I couldn't remember this stuff. It's like, well, why are you remembering it all, any of it? And if it's not that effective, and you're saying thousands of people have been inducted to this and don't know it, how come you're the only one with any sense of memory? And if you really were, why haven't they gotten rid of you or redone your memory or something? It's self-centered. I don't think the guy's being deliberately self-centered, but this is all stuff that he, particularly the guy interviewing him, doesn't challenge him or tell him to elaborate more on. In fact, it's a whole story that just kind of moves along as it goes. So, that's something. Let's see. In combat on Mars against mantids, and the mantid does a memory scan. Again, lots of his stories have to do with essentially his memory being taken from him and then getting pieces of this revealed to him. This is not unlike prophets of the past. and this is not unlike someone who's suffering from a form of schizophrenia or something. I don't think, and that's the thing, is that it's like, oh, he's a crazy guy. No, I don't think he's actually crazy. I think he actually just happens to have a mental illness that he's trying to process. Everything he's saying, I believe when he says it's real. Like, I believe he believes that. I've absolutely no problem believing that when he's recalling these things, he recalls them as experiences, not just delusions. And I'm not knocking the guy for being brave enough to come out and say that, like, he's having these weird, crazy ass memories. I think he should write everything down because it sounds like a really crazy story, and it probably would be a decent selling sci-fi novel. But that said, the stuff he describes much, much, much further matches somebody who is having is suffering from basically vivid dreaming plus schizophrenia of a minor degree, but of a degree that now it's his brain's telling him, oh, these are memories. This actually happened. These are experiences that actually occurred, as opposed to this is just a dream I had. And the thing is some say, well, how come it's all within the same narrative? Well, sometimes when you have a dream, you pick up within the same narrative of where you've had it, particularly if something had a big effect. I've had weeks and months where every time I dream, it'll be continuing the same story. Does that mean I was abducted into that situation and put back, my consciousness put back? No, I don't believe that. But what he's describing sounds a lot like that. And every time he has a recall, and his brain is now pulling and filling more blanks in this more gaps in these memories he's having, it's getting more and more vivid and direct with the details. He has Tony's first time he came out talking about this, he very much focused on him being a kid and being inducted, and him just believing that was something that happened to him. But then since then, in recent years, he keeps getting more revelations as his memory, as he claims, comes back, and that is all stuff well within the capability of the human mind to convince him of. It's not like I think he's making this stuff up. I think he's subconsciously making these things up, and he believes them. And it's not his fault. I don't think he's a malicious guy or he's trying to mislead anybody. But I think the nod and listen and maybe not ask harder questions might have led him to believe, to validate essentially what he's thinking is going on. What he thinks are memories, which are actually delusions. And again, I'm not dragging the guy. I don't. This isn't he's a delusional nut job. No, I don't think it's that. It's not that straightforward. I think he legitimately believes what he experienced was real. But it particularly because every other thing you hear about the secret space program, the only people Tony is cited. And he's cited as one of like the bigger whistleblowers because he has by far the most elaborate story with the most firsthand accounts compared to other people who have blown the whistle on the secret space program, right? But his stories cannot coexist with the vast majority of the other people who come out and talk about secret space program, Solar Warden, that kind of stuff. Tony's stories cannot, basically, it would have to exist in a vacuum in order for it to be true. Like, he has to be the only person ever telling the truth in order for what he's saying to actually be the actual reality. And I think, people just nodding and, that's the thing, like, he was validated, so then, of course, his brain's going to try to give him more and more of these stories. Is his brain's getting, he's getting basically the endorphin validation of people saying, yeah, we believe you. He's getting attention and all that. And I'm not saying it's like he's doing this for attention. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that the way mental illness works, the way these delusions and stuff like that work, he is being taken for a ride by his brain, and it's not his fault, But this is the kind of stuff that does happen, and he just happens to be, very I don't know if personable is quite the right uh, thing to call him, but I should say he is a very sympathetic character, and he's also very interesting because his stories are outrageous and fascinating, and they really get the mind going. But there isn't any evidence. Tony, other than Tony basically just telling stories, there is no evidence he can present to corroborate what he's talking about. Yeah, he talks to other people who sometimes piece their stories into it. But if you go to something like this guy's, what is this guy's, Dauntless Dialogues channel, he did a whole video explaining the space program, right? And he lists, not those people, he lists these people. He's got Tony in there. And he lists Dr. Greer, which I really don't like that guy. And where's the other list? Bob Lazar and all these, and Emery Smith, all these other people, right? The thing is, all of these stories that these people are telling cannot coexist with what Tony is saying. And it doesn't disprove that there's a secret space program or something, like this doesn't, oh yeah, all the conspiracies, all the truth, all the whistleblowers, all of them are wrong just because Tony's wrong. But what it does do is it means it's irresponsible to tie what Tony is saying into these greater narratives. I'm fascinated by Tony himself more than I'm fascinated even by his the story he's telling, because I don't think that I don't think the story he's telling me is true, but I do believe fully he believes it's true, and you know do you want to take that away from him? Does he need drugs? Does he need to be looked at by a doctor? I don't know. Probably not. He might be living his best life because this is something he actually thinks in his head. But this guy's not asking any questions to Tony to contradict other things that he's hearing. These people do not. Their stories cannot coexist with what Tony's talking about. I'll continue some of the things he was going on. Let's see. Every time he communicates with an alien, it's telepathic. Okay, that allows you to. Have you ever had a dream where you're talking to somebody in a language that you don't understand? Like you're talking to somebody in French or German or Arabic, and you can speak it, and you don't know why you can speak it, and you're dreaming, and then you wake up. It's kind of the same phenomena, right? Yeah, I can't recreate that, but in my head, in that dream, I'm speaking French to whoever the French person I need to communicate is with. Sometimes I'm not even playing myself, right? This is the weird kind of stuff dreams have, and it's every single alien is telepathic. And if that was the case, then there would be no hiding anything from anybody. It's kind of silly. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a dream. He talks about the gray human girl psychic hybrid. He's okay. Somebody else had a story like that, and he's tying that in to validate that. It's confusing. He talks about the blue sparkly alien girl he met. Okay, that's again. It's just like I saw this once. If you're dreaming that you're in space and doing all these things, it doesn't, just saying you saw something doesn't lend credibility to it. It's interesting. His story reminds me of, have you guys seen the film Shutter Island? I don't know if I think it was a book first. I don't remember whether it was a remake or not. I don't believe it's based on a true story, but it is based on essentially how certain types of mental illness and schizophrenia actually go about. And Tony's experience he's having, or experiences he's recalling, are very much, it's very, very similar to the way Shutter Island essentially describes having this illness. In Shutter Island, Leonardo DiCaprio's character believes he's a detective. He believes he's trying to get to the bottom of some sort of like murder mystery, and he keeps reliving it. And he's on Shutter Island. He has his best friend who's with him, and it turns out the best friend's actually just one of the doctors keeping an eye on him. And this whole thing is so vividly real to DiCaprio's character. The way it's filmed it's just all assumed to be real. and the whole thing starts breaking down and all this other stuff to the point where you're questioning your own sanity. And it what isn't really revealed until basically the very very end of the movie. Essentially, no, this actually he's actually a patient. He actually basically they've been trying to break him of this delusion by showing him what the truth is, and sadly at the end of the movie they're not able to, and he's being taken off to be lobotomized or whatever it is. And it's just a sad ending. It's supposed to take place in like I think the 30s, right? Um, but that basically they did a very good job in that movie of capturing essentially what is the experience someone has who believes these sort of things, because they'll look at you with a straight face and they fully believe the experiences that they believe they've had. There's no question. Would Tony pass a lie detector test? Absolutely. Absolutely. He believes what he's saying. This doesn't make Tony a bad guy, but it's of all the things, particularly when his his story, that's one kind of grander narrative, is impossible to coexist with the rest of these people, with Bob Lazar, with all these other people. When these stories are impossible to reconcile with each other, Tony is definitely the weak link. He has some of the most details. He's one of the more compelling, sympathetic characters. But the odds of this being basically a undiagnosed mental illness, not only has this type of thing happened before, but maybe not in terms of him thinking, he thinks it's a secret space program, but people think they lived as Roman emperors too. Like there's stuff that happens, and they'll tell you in detail, very detailed things that that they've lived this other life, right? And Tony, it's very much the same thing, and I don't think he's a bad guy, but I think by tying him into the fold as a whistleblower, that really, really, really delegitimizes a lot of what these other people are saying, particularly, basically ex-Defense Department people who are talking about the black programs and stuff. What Tony's saying, basically, he either, either he's, I should say, if what he's saying is true, these people have to be liars. And it's not, and again, it's not that I think Tony's lying, but it's that I fully think that Tony does have some sort of mental disorder that's basically leading him to believe that a lot of this stuff, that this grander narrative is true, that this was his life at one point. And I just don't like that poor Tony here is being woven into this stuff. Because just because he thinks there's his story is about a secret space program, but it's as linked to what these guys are saying as Star Wars is linked to Star Trek, right? He's got a whole other animal going on. So let's see. He recalls things on the spot. He says he has he needs time to recall things. He has a hazy memory, and that's not unlike somebody who's trying to piece together a dream they've had. The rat dude he describes at one point, he talks about talking about a rat guy. It just sounds like some dude from Warhammer. I just thought that was funny. The host says, and Tony confirms, every version of Earth's animals has a higher being version, basically. Like that there's like an alien form, right? Whether it's a mantis or a rat or a... Okay, you're saying that. First of all, there are millions of species on this planet. These people don't believe that. That is a much, 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 much larger narrative to accept than what these guys are even saying. So I hear this, I'm like, yeah, okay, I know you want to do your research, and I know you think it's cool you get to talk to Tony, but if you tie him in with this stuff and you say, well, all these guys, they got to also, they must also know that there's a bazillion different species out there that are all based off of Earth's plant life and animal life. No. Not the case. And and again, another person who doesn't really have credibility, Stephen Greer. What he says contradicts a lot of what these other people say. What he says contradicts what Tony says. I'm sure they probably talk to each other, and Stephen Greer will just nod his head and agree and pretend that's tied into his grander whatever every time. He takes people for a ride. I don't trust or like Stephen Greer. But I the host here, bro, Tony's story cannot coexist with the rest of these, and you should know that. And by presenting that and just ignoring the fact that there's major contradictions in lore with especially something like secret space program and black technology, it really does a disservice to anybody who actually wants to look into this type of I don't say, I guess, conspiracy, for lack of a better word, right? These people all have different things to say. Tony, it seems like it's mental illness. I don't think Tony's a bad guy. I don't think he doesn't believe what he's saying. I think he does believe what he's saying. But it cannot be married to the rest of this narrative. His evidence and testimony does not strengthen anybody else who's listened here. It's just that he tells his story, and he's the only person he adds to strengthening it is basically as his brain comes up with more details, that adds basically credibility to his narrative. He should write it down. That's what he should do. He should write it down, and I'm sure some people would go all L. Ron Hubbard on it and believe like, oh yeah, this actually happened. This was a true story. Maybe he'd probably be rich, right? But that's all. That's all I wanted to I just wanted to touch on Tony Rodriguez. I'm not gonna dunk on him. I'm not gonna bring him up again. I feel bad. I wish the best for him, but guys, you got to take him out of your grander narrative, because his stuff is incompatible. His stories are incompatible with everything else, and that's okay. I'm not saying don't listen to his stories as his narrative unfolds. Don't let your mind wander, because it's fascinating, but it's also, it can't coexist with the rest of the narratives, because it's so out there, it's so over the top. It's just not quite the same type of it's not the same type of story as a whistleblower. The guy he's not a whistleblower. He just is a guy with a crazy story. And I mean crazy in terms of like crazy fun and out way out there. But it's not something that is presentable as evidence, because he's also the only one saying these things specifically. I should say, he's the only one who's saying it who didn't hear it and believe it from him. I've seen people talk about, oh yeah, this and this happened, and they're just citing Tony as the sole source of whatever it is they're trying to say about secret space program or aliens or whatever. And it's like, you can't say that, oh, I'm repeating what Tony said, or somebody repeated what Tony said, and then that means that it's any more credible. Tony's the only guy saying what he's saying about what he's saying. So I'm sorry. I'm sorry if this burst some people's bubbles, but this is I'm trying to help you guys become better skeptics, in the sense of better. If you believe in this stuff, Tony's not going to help you. He's not going to lead you in the right direction. It's interesting. I'm not saying don't listen to him, but what I'm saying is that if you're actually trying to piece these things together, or lend any credibility to what any of these guys are saying, you got to cut Tony out. You can't be citing him as part of the grander body of evidence, because he's not. He's very much his own thing. So that's all.